She served me a plain salad while everyone else had imported steak, and then said, "I only ordered for family." That's when I knew I wasn't just excluded, I was erased. Stay tuned to hear how I went from humiliation to reclaiming my power, right at her dining table. I'm Nadia. I'm 34 years old, and I never imagined that a family dinner would shatter my world and, strangely, set me free. It was supposed to be a celebration. 23 guests sat around a long, gleaming mahogany table under a crystal chandelier, sipping vintage wine, laughter filling the air like a well-rehearsed symphony. Plates of perfectly seared Wagyu steak flown in from Japan were placed in front of every person except me. I remember staring at my empty place setting, my stomach clenched with more than hunger. The fine china, the crystal glasses, the precision of the silverware placement, it all looked like a stage, and I was the invisible actor. Then my Aunt Margot asked the question that no one else dared to voice. "Excuse me, why doesn't Nadia have a plate?" My mother-in-law, Vivian, sitting at the head of the table like a queen on her throne, smiled without warmth. Her reply was casual, almost bored. "I only ordered for family." The words echoed across the polished table like a slap. Forks paused midair. Conversation died. My face burned, but my voice stayed calm when I finally spoke. That dinner was the culmination of 2 years of quiet humiliation, 2 years of being subtly erased. 2 years of hoping that if I smiled enough, tried hard enough, bent just right, I'd finally be accepted. But that moment, the empty plate, was a turning point. If you're watching this, I want to ask you to like, subscribe, and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. Because I'm about to tell you what happened when I finally stood up to the woman who never considered me family. But to understand how I got to that table, we need to go back. I didn't grow up with money. I was raised in a modest, hardworking family in Boston. My dad drove a delivery truck for 3 decades. My mom worked as a secretary at an elementary school. They didn't have much, but they had love and grit. And they gave everything so I could have a better shot. I became the first in our family to go to college, working part-time jobs and taking out student loans. I earned my degree in speech-language pathology and eventually my master's. I opened a small practice working with children with speech disorders, kids who couldn't say their own names or tell their parents, "I love you." I helped them find their voice. It was meaningful work, even if it didn't come with prestige or a fancy zip code. That's where I was when I met Derek. Confident, independent, content. We met at a wedding. He was the best man. I was a college friend of the bride. We locked eyes from across the reception hall in that cliched, almost cinematic way you don't believe actually happens. But it did. He was handsome, charming, successful, a financial analyst from an old money Connecticut family. His father, William, ran an investment firm. His mother, Vivian, was practically Connecticut royalty. Despite our differences, we clicked. He made me laugh. He listened. He seemed grounded, even with his country club background and Ivy League polish. 6 months later, he proposed. I said yes, naively believing that love could bridge the gap between 2 different worlds. That was my first mistake. From the moment I met his mother, I knew. Vivian wore elegance like armor. Tailored designer dresses, pearls, and a perfectly practiced smile that never quite touched her eyes when she looked at me. That first dinner, she asked me questions that weren't really questions. They were assessments, judgments. Where exactly did I grow up? What did my parents do? What college? What did I drive? What kind of apartment? Each answer tightened her smile a little more. And then came the name, Julia. Derek's ex. The one with the vacation house in Martha's Vineyard. The hospital director father. The right pedigree. Vivian mentioned her often, always with a wistful sigh, like Julia was the one who got away, like I was the mistake. But Derek didn't see it. He thought his mother was just traditional or protective. He told me to give her time. Time only made things worse. Over the next 2 years, I became a ghost in their family photos, their plans, their traditions. I tried. I brought gifts. I offered help. I adapted. And still, I was an outsider. Until that night, that dinner. The empty plate wasn't just a culinary oversight. It was a message, one I couldn't ignore any longer. And so, I finally did the one thing I had avoided for years. I spoke. Before that night, before the steak dinner without a plate, my life had been a very different kind of story. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't lavish, but it was full of love, hard work, and quiet pride. I grew up in Dorchester, just outside of Boston. Our house was small but warm, with creaky floors and a fridge that buzzed louder than the TV. My dad, Frank, drove a delivery truck for a local warehouse. He left before sunrise and came home with sore shoulders, stained shirts, and stories about the people he met that day. My mom, Ruth, was a secretary at an elementary school. She knew every kid's name, every teacher's birthday, and always made sure we had food on the table, even if she had to skip lunch to afford it. They never took a vacation, they never had a savings account, but they had each other, and they had me. My parents believed in education like some people believe in religion. They didn't go to college themselves, but they dreamed I would. They worked overtime and cashed in savings bonds to help pay for my tuition. I still remember my dad choking up when I got my acceptance letter to UMass Boston. "You're going to be the first," he said, "the first to change everything." And I tried. I worked 2 jobs during undergrad, tutoring and waiting tables, and took out loans to cover the rest. I graduated with a degree in communication sciences and went on to earn a master's in speech-language pathology. It wasn't easy, but I loved it. Helping children who couldn't speak learn to form their first words, it never stopped being magical. I built a life around that work. I rented a modest apartment in Jamaica Plain, drove a used Honda, and surrounded myself with friends who were kind, funny, and grounded. My life was simple, yes, but it was mine. It was earned. Then came Derek. We met at a wedding, as romantic comedies so often promise. He was in a sleek gray suit, standing at the bar, laughing with the groom. I noticed his ease, how people leaned in when he spoke, how he carried himself like someone who had never worried about paying rent late. He noticed me too. We danced once, then we talked for 3 hours straight. By the time the staff started folding up the chairs, we were still deep in conversation. He was sharp, witty, successful, but not arrogant. He listened. He seemed genuinely interested in my work, even impressed. We started dating soon after. At first, I didn't think about our differences. Yes, he came from money, from Connecticut country clubs and legacy universities. But he wasn't flashy. He didn't flaunt it. When he told me about his family, he made them sound normal. "My dad runs a firm," he'd say, or "Mom volunteers for charity events." It wasn't until I met them that I realized I'd misunderstood the world he came from. His family wasn't just well off, they were elite. His father, William, ran a multi-billion-dollar investment firm. His mother, Vivian, came from generations of wealth. They had art in their home that probably needed insurance policies. Their dinner parties looked like something out of town and country. The circles they moved in weren't just rich. They were old money. That mattered. The first time I met them was at our engagement dinner. Derek had proposed 6 months in, Cape Cod, sunset, ring tucked into a champagne flute. I said yes with my whole heart. I believed love could overcome anything. But Vivian's expression when she met me was a master class in passive disapproval. Her smile was tight. Her eyes assessed me like I was an undercooked dish. And the questions began. Where did you grow up? What do your parents do? Where did you go to school? Do you golf? Each answer seemed to confirm something she already believed. That I didn't belong. She dropped Julia's name repeatedly, Derek's ex-girlfriend. Julia's father is chief of surgery. They used to vacation in the south of France. So accomplished, that girl. You know, she and Derek were quite the couple at the Prescott Gala. I smiled, I nodded, I played nice. Derek didn't notice, or maybe he didn't want to. I told myself it would get better, that Vivian would warm up to me, that I could prove I belonged, not because of my last name, but because of who I was. But over time, I began to realize that no amount of effort would be enough for her, not when I came from the wrong zip code, the wrong parents, the wrong world. Still, I tried. I brought her gifts. I studied the charities she supported. I showed up to every family event dressed conservatively, speaking politely, pretending not to notice when I was left out of group photos, or when the place cards never included my name. And through it all, Derek would say, she just needs time, she's old-fashioned. But time didn't heal anything. It only made the cuts deeper, sharper, more deliberate. And so, by the time the infamous dinner arrived, I was already running on empty. All I needed was one final push to stop trying and start standing. The invitation arrived on a heavy cream cardstock, embossed with gold lettering that smelled faintly of money. It was for an exclusive black tie dinner in honor of William Harrington's retirement from his investment firm, a 7-course meal at the family estate, with a guest list spanning old friends, business partners, and, of course, family. The envelope alone probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. "This is a big deal," Derek said, holding the invitation like it was a holy relic. "Mom's been planning this for months. Everyone who matters will be there." The way he said everyone who matters gave me pause. I waited for him to correct himself, to say, "Of course you matter." But he didn't. He just handed me the card and walked away, already texting someone about cufflinks. The event was 2 weeks away, but the anxiety set in immediately. I knew exactly what this was: a stage, a performance, and I was the outsider cast in a role I hadn't auditioned for. It wasn't just dinner. It was Vivian's version of a loyalty test, one she didn't want me to pass. Still, I tried to prepare. I spent hours researching etiquette rules I hadn't grown up with: how to hold a wine glass properly, how to sit at a formal table without looking like I was trying too hard, which fork was for what. I even asked my Aunt Margot, the only family I had nearby and the only one who truly understood what I was walking into, to give me a crash course in survival. "If Vivian tries to bait you, don't react," she advised over tea. "Maintain grace. That drives people like her insane." Margot had been invited too. Surprisingly, as it turned out, she and William had known each other in college. They weren't just acquaintances. They had been close once. Very close. Their friendship had always made Vivian uneasy, which explained why Margot was rarely included in family events. "I think William insisted this time," Margot said with a smile that hinted at an old memory. "So I'll be there. And I'll be watching." It was the first time I didn't feel entirely alone. In the days leading up to the dinner, Derek became more distant. He was consumed with logistics, guest confirmations, wine pairings, which family heirlooms to display in the foyer. Every time I tried to express my nervousness, he brushed it aside. "You're overthinking it," he said. "Just be yourself." He didn't get it. I had been myself, and it hadn't been enough. I chose my dress carefully. Simple, black, timeless. It had taken me 3 months to save for it. I had it tailored so it fit like it was made for me. My hair was professionally styled, my makeup applied with care to strike the right balance. Polished, but not trying too hard. When we pulled into the circular driveway of his parents' estate that evening, I felt like I was being delivered to judgment. The house was lit like a movie set. Grand columns, flickering lanterns, classical music wafting from inside. Staff in formal uniforms moved with quiet precision. The guests stepped out of luxury vehicles dressed in satin and tuxedos, chatting in crisp northeastern accents that dripped old money. Vivian greeted us at the door herself, bypassing her staff. She hugged Derek tightly, praising how dashing he looked. Then she turned to me, her smile noticeably cooler. "Nadia," she said, her eyes flicking down my outfit like a scan. "You made it." As if that were somehow in question. There was no, "You look lovely," no, "So glad you're here," just a thin-lipped acknowledgement that I existed. Inside, the house buzzed with practiced opulence. The chandeliers sparkled like frozen waterfalls. Servers passed around champagne and hors d'oeuvre. Every guest seemed to know one another, trading laughs and stories about ski trips, country clubs, and prep school reunions. I stood at Derek's side like a decorative accessory, smiling when introduced, nodding at conversations I wasn't invited to join. I found myself drifting toward the dining room just to escape. That's where I saw the table. Long, mahogany, perfectly set for 23. Name cards and calligraphy, crystal glassware, gold-rimmed china, precision that bordered on military. My name was nowhere to be found. I checked twice, then a third time. A slow chill crept up my spine. Behind me, a familiar voice said softly, "Quite the production, isn't it?" I turned to see Aunt Margot in a deep blue gown, elegance personified. Her eyes met mine knowingly. "You didn't see your card either?" I whispered. She shook her head gently. "No, dear, I saw it. You're not missing it." That moment, those words, confirmed what I had feared. I wasn't just forgotten. I was excluded. The bell sounded from somewhere deep in the house, and a member of the staff announced, "Dinner is served." The hum of conversation tapered into polite silence as guests began making their way into the dining room. I lingered back, letting Derek lead the way. I was still hoping this was some misunderstanding, a forgotten name card, a misprint. But as I stepped into the room, reality settled like a weight on my shoulders. The table, so flawlessly arranged, looked like it had come straight out of a luxury lifestyle magazine. 23 seats, 23 name cards, 23 full place settings with charger plates, crystal, folded linen napkins, and menus printed in gold ink. And none for me. Derek looked confused when I tapped his arm. "I don't see my name," I whispered. "Oh," he blinked. "Weird. Maybe they forgot." "Just sit next to me." He pulled a chair from the hallway and slid it between his and Margot's seats, creating a disruption in the table's symmetry that drew Vivian's eyes immediately. Her lips thinned as she walked toward us. "Derek," she said, her voice lined with forced civility, "we arranged the seating quite carefully." "It's fine," he replied. "Nadia can sit here." Vivian gave me a long, unreadable look, then turned and walked away. She never acknowledged the missing place setting. I sat at the makeshift spot with no charger plate, no menu, no wine glass. It felt like I was crashing a wedding I hadn't been invited to. The first course, a lobster bisque with truffle oil, arrived. White porcelain bowls were placed before each guest in perfect synchrony, except me. Margot's hand darted up. "Excuse me, my niece didn't receive the first course." The server looked visibly uncomfortable. He glanced toward Vivian, who replied calmly, "The chef prepared portions for the guests we RSVP'd for. Perhaps she can share with Derek." I heard gasps, felt the heat of eyes on me. Derek leaned over and pushed his bowl slightly toward me with a weak smile. "We can share," he whispered, as if it were no big deal. I took a spoonful. I tasted nothing. The second course arrived, scallops and beurre blanc sauce, each plate a work of art. Mine never came. Derek sliced one scallop off his plate and offered it to me on a napkin. I declined. Third course, a palate cleanser, cucumber mint sorbet. Everyone received theirs, except me. My plate remained pristine and empty. By the time the entree arrived, Japanese Wagyu ribeye, flown in fresh, paired with truffle mashed potatoes, I was numb. Plates were lowered before every guest in a near-silent procession. When the server reached me, he placed a plain, undressed garden salad in front of me. That was the moment everything changed. Margot set her fork down sharply. "Vivian, why does Nadia have a salad while everyone else has steak?" The entire table fell into silence, the kind that makes your ears ring. Vivian's response came smoothly, her tone dipped in condescension. "I only ordered for family. The steak was quite expensive." Derek froze beside me. I looked at him, my voice barely audible. "Am I family or not?" He didn't answer. He just cut his steak, head down, eyes avoiding mine. That was when something inside me cracked. For 2 years I had been shrinking, contorting, pretending not to notice the cuts to my dignity. But the salad on my plate, so deliberate, so symbolic, made it impossible to pretend any longer. I looked around the table. Every fork had stopped. Every conversation silenced. Every guest watching to see what I would do. I set down my napkin. And I stood. The air outside was colder than I remembered. Or maybe it was the heat leaving my body as the adrenaline drained away. My heels clicked softly against the stone walkway as Margot and I walked in silence, the heavy mansion door closing behind us like a final punctuation mark. She squeezed my arm gently. "You did it, sweetheart. You said what needed to be said." But I wasn't sure how to feel, victory, grief, or fear. Maybe all three. We reached my car, parked at the edge of the long circular driveway. I fumbled for my keys, hands still shaking slightly. "I should drive home," I murmured. "You shouldn't drive upset," Margot countered. "Let me take you, or at least follow you." I hesitated. "Okay, you can follow." As I slid into the driver's seat and started the engine, I looked in the rearview mirror. The mansion stood silent behind me, no lights blinking on, no figure rushing out after me. No Derek. That was when it hit me, the full weight of it. He didn't come. He didn't defend me. He didn't follow me. He chose silence. The drive back to my apartment felt surreal. The roads blurred under streetlights, and my mind replayed everything. The wine, the salad, the text messages, the look in Derek's eyes when I called him out. Margot pulled into the parking lot behind me. I got out of the car and she joined me on the sidewalk. "Are you sure you want to go up alone?" she asked softly. I nodded. "I need a moment. Alone, but thank you for everything." She gave me a long hug, the kind that said all the things we didn't have words for, and then she left. Inside the apartment, the silence was deafening. The same walls that had held laughter and intimacy now echoed with absence. Photos of Derek and me lined the hallway, smiling on the beach, kissing at New Year's, dancing at our wedding. But they felt like someone else's life now. A life built on me shrinking and him pretending not to notice. I collapsed onto the couch and let the tears come. They weren't loud sobs or dramatic cries. They were quiet, steady, exhausted tears. The kind that come after a long fight, when the war is over, but the wounds are still fresh. My phone buzzed on the coffee table, a text from Derek. "Call me, please." I didn't respond. Then another. "I'm sorry, can we talk?" Still no response. Then came the voicemail. "Nadia, I don't even know where to start. I didn't handle that well. Any of it. I felt frozen. Please call me back." There was no apology in his voice, just discomfort. I turned the phone face down. That night I slept in the guest room, curled up in a blanket Margot had given me last Christmas. I dreamt of silence, of empty chairs and untouched plates. The next morning, I packed a small suitcase. Not everything, just enough. When Derek walked through the door later that afternoon, he looked panicked. "You left?" "I needed space," I said, standing in the middle of the living room with my suitcase by my side. "To think? To breathe." He ran a hand through his hair. "Nadia, can we just talk?" "I talked last night," I said. "I talked for 2 years. You never heard me." His face fell. "This isn't about one dinner," I continued. "It's about a pattern, a system, and your place in it." "I didn't know what to do," he said. "You do now." And with that, I walked past him, suitcase in hand. He didn't try to stop me. Staying at Margot's apartment was meant to be temporary, but in those early days, it became my sanctuary. She offered me her guest room, a warm cup of tea every night, and, more than anything, space to process everything that had shattered so abruptly. The silence was different here. It wasn't cold or heavy. It was peaceful, healing. But peace came with a cost. I had left my marriage, not physically yet, but emotionally. I had walked away from the future I thought I was building. I had stood up for my worth, but now I stood alone. Derek called, texted, left voicemails. At first his messages were angry. "You embarrassed my family. You made a scene. You need to fix this." Then came the guilt. "Do you even care what this is doing to me? My mom is devastated. You've hurt all of us." But never once did he say, "I see how much I've hurt you. I'm sorry." That omission said everything. And then, 2 days after I left, a letter arrived. Certified. From Vivian's lawyer. The accusations were laughable. She claimed I had taken jewelry from her home and failed to return it. Sentimental pieces, the letter read, of great value to the Harrington family. I stared at the paper, equal parts enraged and stunned. I had never borrowed so much as a brooch from her. This wasn't about jewelry. This was punishment. A message. You may have humiliated me, but I still have power. Margot was furious. "This is intimidation," she snapped, picking up her phone to call a lawyer she knew. I called Lauren instead, a colleague and longtime friend, who listened without interrupting. "Nadia," she said finally, "this is a toxic system. And Derek is still inside it." "So what do I do?" I asked, my voice small. "You protect yourself," she said. "You consult an attorney. You get clarity. You don't wait for them to decide how your life unfolds." It wasn't what I wanted to hear, but it was what I needed to hear. The next morning, I sat in a law office across from a divorce attorney. Her questions were clinical, her tone calm, but everything she said chipped away at the last pieces of hope I had held on to. "Do you have joint accounts?" "No," I said. "Any significant assets together?" "Just the apartment." And how involved is your husband in defending you against his mother's legal threat? I didn't respond. That answer said enough. As I left the office, clutching a folder filled with legal options, I felt two conflicting things at once: devastation and strength. Devastation that it had come to this. Strength that I was no longer pretending I could fix it alone. That evening, Derek texted again. We need to talk. I miss you. I don't want to lose you. But if you want me to choose between you and my family, I'm not sure I can. There it was, the price of integrity. It wasn't just walking away from a man I loved. It was walking away from the illusion that love alone was enough. The illusion that if I just tried harder, I could earn a seat at a table that was never set for me. The cost of standing up for myself wasn't measured in tears or loneliness. It was measured in clarity. Because once you've seen the truth, once you've felt the sting of disrespect, the weight of being invisible, you can never unsee it. I spent that night writing. Not to Derek, not to Vivian, to myself. A letter of self-respect. A promise. I will never again shrink to fit inside someone else's approval. I will never again trade peace for proximity or self-worth for acceptance. I folded the letter and slipped it into my journal. And for the first time in years, I slept soundly. 3 weeks after I walked out of that dining room with nothing but my dignity and a coat over my arm, I met Derek at a small coffee shop on the corner of Maple and Ridge. It was the kind of place where the walls smelled like espresso and second chances. I sat by the window, watching the world move around me while mine had stood painfully still. When Derek walked in, he looked different, tired, rumpled, human. He sat down across from me, holding his coffee like it might give him courage. Nadia, he said quietly, I was wrong. For the first time, he didn't deflect. He didn't minimize. He didn't say you misunderstood or mom didn't mean it that way. Instead, he laid it all bare. How he had grown up under his mother's expectations. How peace in his house always meant giving in to Vivian. How he had learned early on that silence was safer than conflict, and how that silence had cost him the woman he loved. I was so busy trying to keep her calm, he said, that I let you drown. I didn't cry, not this time, I listened. When he showed me a photo on his phone, one of his father, William, and my Aunt Margot in their college years, I finally understood the full circle we had come. My dad loved your aunt once, Derek said. He didn't fight for her. He's lived with that regret for 40 years. He told me not to make the same mistake. It was a turning point, but not a finish line. Words are easy, I told him. What about actions? That question became the foundation for our rebuilding, not just of a marriage, but of mutual trust, boundaries, and understanding. The next few months were filled with counseling sessions, difficult conversations, and painful truths. But for the first time, I wasn't doing the work alone. Derek confronted his own family patterns. He called out his mother when she tried to manipulate. He stopped explaining me to her and started defending me to her. He even told her that any future family gatherings would only include us if I was treated with respect. Genuine respect, not performative civility. William, too, began to change. He started calling me to ask about my work, sent me articles about speech therapy breakthroughs, and once even surprised me with a donation to a local clinic I volunteered at. It's time I learned more about who my daughter-in-law really is, he said. As for Vivian, well, some wounds don't heal overnight. But therapy forced her to confront her own past, and while her progress was slow, it was real. There were apologies, awkward and delayed, but they came. So did invitations, not just to dinners, but to conversations. There was even a moment when she handed me a wrapped box with an antique brooch inside. It belonged to my grandmother, she said. I thought you might like to wear it someday. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't forgetting. But it was a start. And maybe most healing of all was what happened outside that family, the community that came forward. Michael and Stephanie sent texts of support. Elaine invited me to lunch. Even a few of Derek's cousins who had sat silently at that infamous dinner reached out privately to say, I saw what happened. I should have said something. I'm sorry. With each conversation, the walls around me crumbled a little more. The fortress I had built to protect myself was no longer necessary. I didn't need armor. I needed authenticity. One afternoon, while rearranging our living room, I took our wedding photo down from the box where it had been hidden and placed it on the mantel. For the first time in months, I looked at that smiling couple and didn't feel bitterness. I felt resolve. We had made it through fire, and we were still standing. Then life gave us a new beginning. 2 pink lines. Pregnancy. Derek cried when I showed him the test. So did I. And in that tiny miracle, I saw not just new life, but a new chapter. One that would be written differently. One where silence wouldn't be the family legacy. Where love would come with protection, not conditions. We were still rebuilding, still healing, but this time, we were doing it together. And that made all the difference. 6 months after that infamous dinner, I found myself once again walking up the grand stone steps to William and Vivian's estate. But this time, I wasn't a guest trying to fit in. I was family, walking in on my own terms. It was William's birthday. The invitation had come handwritten by Vivian herself, something that in the past would have made me suspicious. But the tone had changed. There was no passive-aggressive formality, no vague ambiguity. It was simple, clear, and included both my name and Derek's as equals. As Derek parked the car, he turned to me and squeezed my hand. "Whatever happens in there," he said, "we leave as a team." I nodded, not because I needed the reassurance, but because I believed him now. The house was just as grand as I remembered, but it no longer intimidated me. When Vivian opened the door, she greeted us both with a tight but respectful smile. "Nadia," she said, "thank you for coming. And congratulations again, I've already started looking at nursery wallpaper." I chuckled politely, neither dismissing her gesture nor overreading it. We were in the slow, awkward dance of reconciliation, and for once, I didn't feel like I was leading alone. Inside, the house looked subtly different. Among the framed family photos was a new addition, our wedding portrait placed prominently on the hallway table. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at it. The same image that had once been hidden away now stood in the open, unashamed and unchallenged. "Looks good there," William said as he walked up beside me, "long overdue." During dinner, the seating was unremarkable in the best way possible. There was a place card with my name in Vivian's handwriting, a menu with salmon and vegetarian options, and when the dessert arrived, it landed in front of me, just like everyone else. Small things, huge things. But what struck me most was the mood. The undercurrent of judgment and tension that used to saturate every gathering had shifted. Conversations flowed more freely, jokes felt lighter. Even Vivian, while not effusive, was no longer glaring at my jewelry or analyzing my tone. Elaine asked questions about the baby. Stephanie offered to pass down baby clothes. Michael made a dad joke that made me laugh so hard I nearly spilled my sparkling water. For the first time, I wasn't performing. I was just being. And then came the moment that tied it all together. During a toast, William stood and lifted his glass. "I've had many birthdays," he said, "but this one feels different. Not just because I'm older, but because I finally feel like our family is becoming whole. And that has nothing to do with blood or tradition, and everything to do with effort, honesty, and courage." He raised his glass toward me. "To Nadia, for reminding us that dignity should never be negotiable." The table fell into a respectful silence, and then, slowly, glasses lifted. "To Nadia, to me." I met Derek's eyes, and in them, I saw something I hadn't seen before: peace. When we returned home that night, I curled up on the couch, resting my head against Derek's shoulder as he rubbed my belly gently. "You know," he said softly, "our daughter is going to grow up in a very different family than the one I did." I smiled, "Because we burned down the old blueprint and rebuilt a better one," he agreed. The fire that once consumed me with humiliation and hurt had become the forge for something stronger. I had found my voice at a table that once silenced me. I had claimed my place in a room that tried to shrink me. Not by yelling, not by begging, but by standing up, standing firm, and walking away when necessary. That's the full circle. Not just being accepted, but being respected. Not just fitting in, but being valued. Not just surviving, but rewriting the rules. And as I looked toward the future, toward the child growing inside me, I knew this truth would be her inheritance. Your place at the table is not something you earn by shrinking. It's something you claim by standing tall. Respect isn't something you earn by shrinking yourself to fit in. It's something you demand by standing tall when others want you small. This story is a reminder that sometimes you have to risk losing everything to gain the self-worth you should never have given away. If you've ever felt excluded, overlooked, or underestimated by people who should have embraced you, this story is for you. Like, subscribe, and drop a comment below telling me, have you ever had to choose between being accepted and being yourself? I'd love to hear your story.